Hey guys, let's get started with painting this landscape. The first thing you want to bring up for yourself is in your Google Classroom, under this assignment called Landscape Step-by-Step Painting, there's a resource here called Colors in the Sky. Okay, when you click that, this file should open up and you'll be able to see the three colors that I picked out that we can observe in the sky. This yellow, we can just use the light yellow straight out of the tube. This yellow-orange is something you want to mix, as well as this light brown. The yellow-orange is something you can observe in the majority of the sky, okay? Whereas the yellow is observable in this very bright halo, this yellow halo around the white sunlight. Whereas this light brown is what we're going to be using to lay in the color for the clouds over here. Okay, so step one for yourself is to mix these three colors. I've already mixed those three myself. This is my yellow-orange. We're going to be using the light yellow straight out of the tube. And then this is the light brown. Mine's a little more on the orangish side, but even if your light brown's not perfectly mixed, it's okay. And just as a note, this I mixed up by combining plenty of white with a little bit of the burnt umber. No, this is I'm sorry. Let me look at the tube. What's the name of this guy? Yeah, it should be burnt sienna. Okay. Right there. So that's burnt sienna with a little white, and I added a touch of crimson and a slight bit of yellow to it. Okay. For the yellow orange, I put plenty of yellow and just a small amount of the crimson red. All right. So step one for you guys, you could pause the video here if you need to, and mix these three colors and have them ready to go. Otherwise, if you already have them and they're mixed up, let's start painting here. The reason why we're starting with the sky is because it's got the lightest colors for us. Now, what we're going to be focusing on first is the overall washes of color. So we're going to start with the yellow halo around the sun, as well as the orange wash around the sky. And for now, we're not even going to worry about the clouds, because those are the darker colors that we can take care of afterwards in subsequent layers. So make sure before you grab your yellow, your brush is clean of any residual paint, possibly left over from the mixing. And from cup number 2, which is the clear water, I want you to grab plenty of water, and you're applying this first coat of paint as if it was watercolor. Okay, so we're looking for low opacity. Basically, we want things to look pretty see-through, and like I said, for now, for simplicity's sake, we're going to ignore the clouds, and we're going to paint in the sky, starting with this yellow halo. And we're not going to go anywhere below this line over here, that where basically that's the line that divides the sky from the land. Okay, this is the mountain range over here. So we're just going to stick with the sky for now. If you do happen to lay your brush strokes down in this area, it's not a big deal, because the colors are going to be so dark you can paint over it easily afterwards. But for visual simplicity, do try to keep things just in the sky area. So that's my little halo of yellow right there. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my brush, make sure there's no more color left over on the rag when I do this. And then before I switch over to my orange, I'm going to make sure my brush is pretty damp, and then grab this color. Again, we're using a mixture of water as if we're using watercolor over here. Okay. One thing I did forget to mention, if you notice over here, because I taped things off, even though my brush is going over the border, it's not painting into that border. So before you start this process, it's a good idea to make sure that that your borders are taped off, either with Scotch tape or with masking tape, ideally. So I'm just laying in a wash of orange to go across the majority of the sky, and I'm stopping myself over here at the line where the mountains begin. We're not looking for smooth blends quite yet. Just laying in the initial sort of washes. Okay, so that's our first layer. It's pretty rough, and all we're looking for is a general mapping, okay, of where the major color areas are. You want to let this completely dry, okay? And once you're done with the brush and all the paint, be sure to wash off all the paint in cup number 1. Dry it off on your rag and just lay it flat. One thing I'm going to do right now is take my hair dryer and just dry this off real quickly. You can do the same too if you want to expedite this process. Now that that's good and dry, we're going to use the same kind of technique where we're using plenty of water on our brush to lay in the overall areas inside of the clouds. Now, if we take a look at our reference image, the clouds we have over here, because they're in front of the sunlight, it shows up much darker and silhouetted. Okay, there are variations for the clouds that I'm pointing at up here. Okay, there is some lighter areas right there, but for the most part, these clouds, we can, if we were to generally block them in a color, it would be this lighter brown. Okay. So make sure your brush is clean. Get into cup number 2, which is the clear water. And then grab yourself some of that light brown that you mixed up. We're not looking for full coverage in terms of opacity. We're actually looking for less low opacity here. Okay, meaning we want the paint to be see-through, because this is just the initial layers of what we're putting down. So I'm going fairly quickly here, if you notice. I don't want you to do the same. I'm just doing it at this speed so that the video is not super long. Okay, when you paint this, take your time with it. Okay, painting, it's a very enjoyable process, especially if you do take your time. Now this is just the first layer we're putting down. It's not the final color that we're going to end up with. On every square inch of this painting, we're going to be doing a lot of blending, okay? Because there's a lot of color transitions that are going to be really fun to do, okay? Between the and since we're doing the sky right now, there's going to, amongst the three colors that we mixed up, there's all sorts of blends in the sky that that we can capture there between that yellow and that darker, the yellow orange in particular. Now that we got the clouds mapped in here in broad strokes like this, it's a little easier to see the different zones of the sky that we're going to be working in. Okay. Okay, so that's the overall. Oops, I made a mistake there. So what I just did there was I used cup number 2 to wash off my brush when I should have used cup number 1, but it wasn't a huge deal because there wasn't a whole lot of paint in my brush anyway. That might happen to you, that's fine. If it got real bad, just change out your water, it's all good. Oh, there is a little area I forgot to kind of lay in there with the light brown. There we go. Okay, so while this dries, let's talk about starting to blend in some of these areas using some more opaque paint, all right? In the sky, let's see, what would be a good area? Let's take this top left corner and use that as a chunk to start with, okay? Firstly, you want to make some observations about the kind of blend in colors that you're noticing here. There's a bright white for the sunlight that transitions to a very bright yellow, which doesn't last too long because it transitions quite quickly into a yellow-orange. And by the time it gets up over here where my mouse is at, that's a deeper orange there. And then over here, we're seeing some lighter browns, okay? And overall, there's a kind of S-shaped sort of area over here, right? A darker area of that light brown and orange that we want to capture. And then up in the far top left corner, there's more of that lighter orange, but it's still darker than the orange that we see down over here. Okay, so very light orange, deeper orange, lighter brown over here. And some of these patches of lightness over here, that's the kind of stuff we want to be looking out for too. So let's just chunk this top left area of the sky, and we're going to start to blend that color, all right? So much of this process should feel familiar because we've practiced something very, very similar using our apple exercise. And from there, if you remember, gouache is quite forgiving. Okay, so even if you make some mistakes and one color overpowers another, it's okay. You can go back and forth. So to begin with, I'm going to add a little water to my white to reconstitute it. And I'm going to start with this color here and then work my way out to the yellow and then into the orange and eventually that darker kind of swoosh over here in the deeper orange and brown area. But to begin with, I want some nice white over here, and for now I'm not going to worry about, I'm going to stop where the lines of the clouds are, where I put down that that brown. Okay, so I want a good amount of white, and I'm going to overextend it slightly into the area where I know I'm going to start blending it with the yellow. Ideally, you're using the correct consistency of paint at this point. The ideal consistency where it begins to cover up your pencil lead lines. Okay. Now I'm going to switch over to the yellow right now. I've overextended the white into the yellow area, just slightly. I'm going to grab a tiny bit of the yellow. Okay. Just at the tip of my brush. I'm going to overextend it to the left side because I know I'm going to blend it with the orange I'm going to put there. But my main goal right now is to begin blending it into the white area. Sort of pushing that back toward the right side. So I have a smoother transition between the yellow and the white. Now let's say I overpowered the white and I went too far in my blend. Kind of like that. That's okay. Like we experienced with some of our beginning exercises, gouache is forgiving. So wash off your brush, dip it into a little bit of clean water, get some more of that white. Start in the middle over here and push that yellow back toward the left side and reblend. And you can go back and forth in this fashion. Okay, so I'm pretty happy now with that initial blend between the white and the yellow. Now I'm going to start focusing on the yellow transitioning into that lighter orange area over here. Okay. To do that, I'm going to put a little bit more yellow on this side to overextend it, expecting my the subsequent orange I put on there to mix and reactivate this this layer of paint I'm putting down. Switching colors, so I'm going to wash off the paint in my brush with cup number 1. Grab a little bit of clean water. I don't think I mentioned this super explicitly. This is the stage of painting while we're blending right here, where we are using more paint in the brush and less water so that we're achieving a higher degree of opacity and coverage. So here I'm laying in this orange right here, and I'm finding it to be overpowering the yellow. That's okay. I'm going to wash off my brush, go back in there with the yellow, give it a better blend. So I'm going to extend this all the way to the top. I might be kind of stretching the paint a little too far here. Yeah, I'm not getting that degree of opacity that I want, but It's okay. We'll keep working with it. Okay, well, so what you see me doing here is I'm just going back and forth until I get a smoother blend and a smoother gradient that I'm happy with. Okay, as much as possible. I want the transition from the white to yellow to orange to be nice and gradual. Okay, and it does take some back and forth, and that's all right. It looks like I'm going to have to remix some of my orange over here because I used up most of it. So whenever you're remixing colors, you want to start with the lightest one, which in my case is the yellow. Clean off your brush, and you just need a small amount of the darker color. In our case, which is this crimson red that we're going to use. A little bit goes a long way. So there you see me demonstrating how easy it is for the red to overpower the yellow. I'm going to have to add a whole lot more yellow to this mixture now to bring it to that yellow-orange area that I want. Okay, that's a little closer, and it's closer to the consistency I want. I'm going to start to lay in this kind of S-shaped area over here. There we go. That's good coverage. That last batch of paint that I mixed up with some fresh yellow is having a much better time covering up the grid lines underneath. So that's about what we want to see. Okay. Now up over here is also that same sort of orange, but I know that I'm going to want to lighten this top left area up a slight bit. Okay. I'm going to switch colors now to add a little white here. Probably going to need a little recharge of that white. So it's nice and opaque. I'm going to mix that right into this top left area. Just begin blending that. It's a little more like it. And then over here where I have this for now, which is a pretty bright orange, I'm going to start laying in some brown right over it in some streaks. So again, we're working with more paint and less water in the brush now because we want to start achieving that higher degree of opacity. Now I'm not super happy with that mixture. I think I'm going to restart using that pure burnt umber. I don't need a whole lot of it because it's a kind of detail here. We are going to be blending the whole thing together. Just a couple streaks of that. I'm going to leave it there. Now my game plan is to blend all of this whole area together so it's not so streaky. Okay. For me to do that, I'm going to have to go back and forth like I did before. So I'm going to overextend this orange into the bottom area over here. Switch colors back to this yellow and start blending right into it. And I move up and down. Starting to blend some of the brown and the orange together. It's getting a little closer to what I want. I think some of the color mixtures are going to take some finagling. Over here, for instance, I want it to be slightly lighter. So I'm going to lay in some white in this area. Sort of blend that out too. And again, we can go back and forth. Meaning, I just when I started laying in that white, I noticed it was overpowering the yellow, the orange on top. So I went back in with a little bit of the orange, and I'm sort of going back and forth right now. Up over here in that area, I want to add in some more white as well as a little bit more yellow, because there was that bright patch in the sky that we want to capture. Okay. And right around here, where I started to kind of invade this white space, I'm going to get a smoother blend in that portion of the sky too, so that the white of the sunlight doesn't have this like sharp orange edge around it anymore. So I'm going to push in some of this white. And blend that back out. And I overextended that, so I'm going to add in a tiny bit of yellow just right around the halo of that white sunlight. And I think we're getting close to getting this top left chunk finished in this portion of the sky. let's see. I'm going to add a light wash of white just in this small area to give this darker portion in the sky a little more of a S-shaped curve. There we have it, pretty similar. It doesn't have to be an exact copy of what you see in the reference image, but we want to, we're basically using this reference image to guide our creative efforts here, and really like use this as an opportunity to study the color and really just enjoy the process of mixing and blending the colors together. Okay, so hopefully you had a good time getting to this point. The rest of the sky and you know, the other portions of it along with the clouds, I'm going to create more videos on, but work on this for now. If you feel confident about the process itself and the blending, you can move on to the top right area over here. All right, guys, good luck. I'll see you in class.